recording.
Oh, there's Maurice.
If you're relying on me to show
Yeah.
you.
Well, I know I heard a lot about you, so I'm glad to see your face, so I know what you look like.
Yeah, nice to meet you. I've heard a ton about you as well, Mary.
I
Thanks
guess
for
so.
coming.
You get
Thank you.
cleaned up where the most of us haven't seen it before. But again, if you would mute, Amaran, if you mute your mic, mute your microphone, you would just cut out on the very bottom, right, bottom left corner of your screen, you'll see a little microphone. It says mute, and if you just click on that, it'll put a line across it.
Okay.
When you click it again, it'll unmute it. And that's for anybody else who's unfamiliar with all of the intricacies of Zoom. As well as if you want to write in a comment to anybody, if you're unfamiliar with this, also on the bottom of your screen, you'll see this little bubble that says chat. If you click on that, the chat will pop up to your right side and you can send messages to everybody, or you can click the little and make it specific to your favorite person. But without further ado, I want to talk to you about change agents. So I'm introduce myself. I'm Gray, and my partner in crime and production is Maurice Basalian. And Maurice and I have been working together as media, predominantly documentary filmmakers and video producers, directors, writers for a number of years, and have been working in podcasts these last handful of years. And matter of fact, Maurice was my very first full-time staff person for Juneteenth Productions when I started the company a little over 20 years ago, and went with me and Al Rasha, who's also on this call, to the Sudan for a documentary that we did on the ancient Black civilization of Nubia. So Maurice and I have worked together off and on for a good part of that 20 years, and decided to take on this venture because we felt very strongly that too often the experiences and voices of people of color or those who are marginalized by society are overlooked and underreported by the media, and both of our careers have been solely and more upsetting, we feel, is the lack of coverage of the efforts that to address issues and find solutions that communities of color by the people who are living there and working there, that goes unreported or unnoticed, and worse yet, tends to be reported as victims. So about a year and a half ago, we decided to craft this concept that became what you're going to see today, Change Agents, by telling these stories of ground level efforts for change, told by and the voices of the people who are actually living in the communities and doing the work. So we took this, what we thought was a great idea, and to do that, we knew we needed several things. We needed to develop and build trusted relationships with community-based organizations, organizers, and activists, so that rather than us coming in and telling the story, we would be the vehicle to allow them to tell the story. We wanted to recruit young, emerging journalists of color who were capable and passionate about collaborating with communities to tell stories of social justice with journalistic integrity. We wanted to provide professional skill building and the tools for doing that for the journalists and the activist teams that we paired together to produce high quality audio documentaries, as well as acknowledging all of the restrictions that we have been under since COVID started. And then we also wanted to make it have legs by creating a network with Chicago area and other media professionals that offered career advice and job opportunities for the journalists, but also provided a greater awareness and media savvy for the activists and their organizations to assist them going forward. And last but not least, we needed some money. So to pull it off, we were able to get 2 generous grants from the Field Foundation and the Chicago Community of Trust here in Chicago, and with the assistance and guidance and love of our fabulous fiscal sponsor, City Bureau. So,
City Bureau.
exactly. Let's hear it for City Bureau.
It's been amazing.
Yeah. So they haven't just tracked our dollars, they've given us a lot of advice. And great people doing great things.
There's something weird going on.
Maurice,
Check out the website. Oh.
Anybody on, please, hey Marva, just unmute yourselves and then unmute yourself when we are meeting our producers. So Mo, I'll turn it over to you about our process.
Okay, great. While I'm talking, Judy's going to post City Bureau's link in the chat room. Right, you all should check them out. They are pretty amazing. So when we launched this, we kind of identified immediately that our #1 priority would be locating CBOs, community-based organizations, and our bar was that they had very close ties on a grassroots level to the community, and that they were doing demonstrable work that was making change. We relied on Judy's 30-year history in Chicago working with such organizations. Time I spent in Chicago, we also looked at organizations who were being funded by Field and Chicago Community Trust, and many of Chicago's other great foundations. And we started the long process, which was interviews and research and working out schedules, and because it was a commitment for the activists who had to come in for 12 weeks, work 15 hours a week. Was it 15 hours, Judy?
Yeah.
Yeah, 15 hours a week, all while holding full-time jobs. Same for the journalists. So eventually we narrowed down to 5 fantastic organizations: Institute for Nonviolence Chicago, Northwest Side Housing Center, Residents Association of Greater Englewood, which is RAGE, the Jane Addams Senior Caucus, the Alliance of the Southeast, and Organized Communities Against Deportation. And all of these fit the bill in spades. I mean, the work they do in the community, is stellar. Their ties. If you're a journalist and you're trying to tell a story, to have organizations like these who have such far reach and have such access to sources is, it's like a pig and you know what. So it's been great. And priority number 2, probably equally as important, is identifying journalists. We were looking for young journalists or any journalists who were launching their career, and who had interest in this type of journalism, which is solutions-based journalism, and that's showing not only an issue or a problem in the community, but what are some of the concrete things that are being done to make positive change in that community and against that issue. And we found stellar journalists who are launching what will be, I'm sure, esteemed and lengthy careers. So I don't know who is giggling. That is, they all are going on to big and better things, bigger and better things. I don't know about better, but certainly bigger things. So, then we paired them. We paired them with the community activists. We looked at who might have the best chemistry. We looked at the interests of the journalists, their background, telling certain stories. And we spent time hopefully finding the right pairings. And I think we did, because watching them work as teams was a joy. They always, the collaboration and seeing where different skill sets came in, and the activists who were all, without an exception, like had just great instincts as journalists and storytellers, and our journalists who all were activists at heart. They just made great pairings. And what followed was a 12-week workshop that was a lot of fun and had a lot of joy and a few tears along the way. It was hard work, but good work and fulfilling. And I think between COVID and the challenge of launching this, and Judy and I stumbling our way forward, and for the activists discovering totally new skill sets, this was a great challenge, and it's definitely incredibly rewarding, I hope, for everybody involved. And so what came of that are some amazing stories. So I won't waste any more time. I'll launch into our first show, which is Taken Away.
Hold on, let me pull it up. This is my PowerPoint venture. But yeah, to Mo's point, I mean, after all of that, we are so very proud and of these really excellent pieces. So if you want to introduce this while I share the screen, Mo, we can, and then I'll play it.
Unbelievably proud, yeah. So Taken Away, it's a story of 2 men who suffered months-long incarcerations at the hand of ICE, and waiting to hear if they were going to be deported. I don't know, for most of us in the workshop, we had no idea about the facilities that they were being held in, that this is even happening right under our nose. And it focuses on the work that Organized Communities Against Deportation did with them to help them deal with their legal issues, their mental issues, and their physical issues, all of which were taking a tremendous toll on their lives. So, and with that taken away, we'll take it away. Judy.
Oops. Okay, supposed to work smoother than this.
Children are jailed, taken from their families, and put in these detention centers. Alex is currently living in a church on the south side of Chicago. Sometimes his days are filled with gentle sounds of classical music from the music lessons held here. He's staying here because he fears ICE may target his family.
Even though I had been an undocumented immigrant for a long time, I never envisioned what the process was like. I never envisioned what people would potentially go through in detention, or for how long that would be, or how intricate the immigration system is. Once I went through it, I realized that there is not nearly as much advocacy and there is not nearly as much publicity into what really happens.
Alex's case is still open, meaning I can't disclose why Alex was arrested. But while on probation for that arrest, visiting his probation office for the first time, Alex was arrested by ICE agents. The agents had a description of what Alex was wearing and the office he was coming from. His probation officer reported him to ICE. Alex was already battling with his mental health before entering jail. Being locked up increases instability. He went from 2 different kinds of medication to 10. He suffered from horrible insomnia and had night terrors every night.
It just feels like they're telling you, you don't have the right to live. You don't have the right to be protected. I remember just how much anguish and how much guilt I felt.
Alex spent most of his time reading as a way to cope. He also spent his time helping others in need of guidance.
Being in a detention center where mainly there were Spanish-speaking people, I felt that it was my job to help as many people as I could, just writing requests for things that people needed, or translating between them and the officers, or translating, legal documents a lot of times.
Growing up for Alex, he credits his mother as his biggest influence.
My mom has always been as involved in my life as she can.
When Alex was arrested by ICE, Alex's mother didn't waste a single second in trying to get help for her son. He told me his mother would have called the White House if she had the direct number. His mother connected with a Chicago-based group, Organized Communities Against Deportation, or OCAD. They are a group of organizers building a resistant movement against deportation and the criminalization of immigrants and people of color in Chicago. They assist deportation cases with tailored goals for each individual case. Antonio Gutierrez is one of the co-founders of OCAD. Antonio is also the coordinator for strategies and oversees the administrative and finances for OCAD.
One of our most important values as OCAD is this aspect of being undocumented led. So we believe that as undocumented people, we can fight ICE and that we don't need allies or elected officials to do that for us. That we can talk to the public about it, create narratives about how we've been criminalized for so many centuries in this country, and that in this country we have an issue with how our immigration system is broken based on the fact that it's based on a system, right, of white supremacy and xenophobia. And it's really important for us to really make those connections between criminalization of immigrants happen and how then tools further criminalize, like for example, the gang database, right, the Chicago Police Department has, is then used by the police to criminalize immigrants and people of color, but then how that tool is shared with other agencies like ICE.
OCAD works with individual cases and creates an action plan specific to each case. For Alex, he needed support dealing with the living conditions, something Alex was very vocal about.
For Alex's case, OCAD created a public campaign to create a narrative about why he was still being held in detention, even though the judge had already approved an asylum claim, which granted him relief and was able to get him released. But regardless of that, ICE was still holding him. And so it was more about highlighting Alex's circumstances and the conditions that he was experiencing inside the detention center to pressure ICE into his release in itself.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Was that the 5 minutes, Judy?
Yeah, that was it.
Oh, well, then applause are absolutely necessary, folks. This piece, I mean, all of them, you should go and listen to them, obviously. And this piece is particularly heart-wrenching when you hear their stories and what they went through. Our producers on this was Jesus Montero, who is a multimedia journalist from Chicago. He graduated DePaul and was a recipient of the 2019 Facebook Journalism Project Scholarship. He's a reporter for Cicero Independente and a former research investigator for NBC5 and Telemundo. Alex Torres, who was our activist on the piece, grew up in Chicago as well. And then after serving his time and having a tremendous ordeal, he was inspired to work on the behalf of others who were facing, trials at the hand of ICE and were incarcerated and dealing with deportation issues in Chicago and across the country, and is now working with OCAD, which helped secure his freedom and helped keep him in the country so that he could be with us on this amazing workshop. And Alex, like the rest, as I said, has great chops and could have easily been a journalist as an activist. So I'm going to start out with a question, and then I hope that others will follow up and ask their own questions. Both are here to talk. So this is both to both of you, Alex and Jesus. What was it? I mean, walking into the workshop, being a part of this workshop, like what were your initial impressions, and what were your feelings in participating in something like this, which I imagine was a unique experience. Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Mel. Yes, it certainly was a unique experience. I think both Jesus and I were rather surprised how much of our own communities we don't know about. As much as some of the other organizers and reporters, some of the ordeals that the immigration community, the immigrant community goes through. We don't know a lot of the problems that Black people go through. We don't know a lot of the problems that people on the other side go through. And I think that was very powerful for us to be able to unite our communities in a way that we hadn't before and make each other aware of each other, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'd like to just echo what Alex said. But first, thank you everyone for joining us. A lot of beautiful faces here for this very important cause and listening through these very important stories. But it was challenging to say the least. A lot of these aren't just stories. These are people's lives. These are people's pains. These are some of the worst moments they've had in their lives. And it's our job to come to a space and try to get it all in 25, 30 minutes. And that was probably the most challenging, but what this space provided was a safe space within the City Bureau office and then later remote on how these community leaders came together and journalists of color came together in a space where I've never seen before. I've never been in a room with so many brown and Black people. Usually at these journalism levels or higher education, it's usually doesn't look like the communities that they serve. And so I felt like the biggest thing that really helped the narratives or helped us finish these stories was the support that we've had with each other in the space that we created.
Yeah.
And for that, we also have to thank Juneteenth and Judy and Maurice. So thank you guys.
Thank you guys. And I put in the chat OCAD's link and see if you want to follow up with anything that they're doing there. I mean, I'm totally in love with the work that they're doing and the advocacy and the help that they're providing. But before we go on to the next segment, would anybody like to have any harder question for Jesus or Alex, as they can take it in terms of their production experience or journalism experience or just telling the story? And if you want to ask a question at this point, you can go ahead and unmute yourself or raise your hand, or I can't see everybody. So best probably just unmute yourself.
I think what I could add to my previous statement, if nobody else has a question, and then interrupt me if you do or raise your hand. The idea of the project is to have a journalist facilitate or just assist with the community leader to help create this narrative for this podcast series. But I say about a week or two into the project, the community activists then took it upon themselves to help tell their own story, right? And I'm a strong believer in you don't need to go to journalism school to be a journalist. You don't need to work in a newsroom to be a journalist. Some of the most powerful journalists I've encountered or read these past few years are people from within the community. And I think it's important for people from within the community to tell their own stories. And that's why these community groups like OCAD are taking it upon themselves to reclaim that narrative. And it was an absolute honor being able to help tell Alex's story, as well as the other person, Beto, Jose Antonio Gutierrez, to help tell his story. And it's something like I'm a journalist. I go to bed, I wake up, I can wear different many hats. I cannot be a journalist, but these community leaders, it's their livelihood, it's their life. It's something that they cannot put away at the end of the day. It follows with them. And we have a question by Ms. King, Warren King. You can go ahead and unmute.
Yeah,
yourself.
thank you. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes.
You can hear me. Okay. So, Jesus and Alex, thank you for the story. Very powerful, gentlemen. I'm wondering, was how do I put this? Was this story or these stories that you uncovered, were they isolated? Did you feel like they were kind of spread across the community? Is this a single voice among many? I mean, do you understand? What's your perspective on that?
I'm sorry, I don't know that I understand the question correctly. Could you repeat that?
Sure, I can't. So so what I heard was, a voice in this young person. I think his name was Alex, who was caught up in detention with ICE. In your reporting or investigation of the community, is this a widespread kind of event? Has this happened to a lot of people? Is it's still going on even with a new administration that we have? And it may be too early for you to comment on that.
Thank you.
But I was just curious.
Thank you. So so I'm actually the young man in the tape. Yes, this is something that particularly did happen under the Trump administration. Unfortunately, a lot of us people of color were targeted very, very strongly. In my case, what was happening was within the city of Chicago, we're supposed to be considered what's called a sanctuary city, right? Which means that the police is not supposed to turn people into ICE. Unfortunately, that was not being respected and or happening outside in the Chicagoland area, in the suburbs and things like that. So in situations like mine, when people had an arrest, be it for having too loud of music, and then your neighbor would call the police on you, then you'd be arrested, and then ICE had the power to hold you. In that case, then once they hold you, they can potentially hold you in a detention center for however long it takes for your immigration case to be resolved, and then you may be deported. Fortunately, one of the first things that President Biden has done is sign some executive orders that prevent that from happening anymore. But as you said, it is still pretty early. We saw it a lot. I mean, a lot happening during the 4 years of the Trump administration, and right now we're definitely looking to see that shift and that change. And it looks like we are making some progress, and we are taking some steps in order for that not to happen.
Yeah, and to add on to Alex, and I know there's another question in the chat, but Roy, this issue has been longstanding. It's been a political, I think, keynote that a lot of administrations have used to either gain support. During the Obama administration, over 6 million undocumented immigrants were deported. And this isn't a Latinx or Latino or Mexican issue. There is a growing number of European immigrants, also a lot of immigrants from Africa that are having visa issues and are currently in limbo. And obviously, with the influx of immigrants from South America coming into the border and causing a lot of commotions, especially this past year with the widespread forced hysterectomies and widespread. This is definitely an issue that has been going on for quite some time. And like Mo mentioned earlier, in a room full of people, room full of activists, not a lot of people, including myself, beginning the project, had the insight to what it meant to be deported, what it meant to be undocumented. And I feel like with this episode and the other episodes within the series, we hear firsthand account on the headline news, you know, so-and-so immigrants, so-and-so Southside, Inglewood. Here we hear it from the testimony from the people that are actually living through the trauma, but more importantly, what they're doing to prevent or create future trauma for the future generations.
Thank
I
you.
know Linda has a question.
Yeah, Linda, you have a question?
I do. So, you know, this is kind of an eye opener for me in the sense that I never really looked at Chicago as a city that had a large immigrant community. You know, I'm coming from Southern California where we, you know, border up against Mexico, and it really, you know, is an issue. So the fact that it's not really known widespread as an immigrant community, how do you feel that this issue is similar or different from other areas of the country?
I think that there is a once again, I think that there is a very big misconception that the media, along with federal agencies, they create this narrative that certain places in the United States are safe for certain immigrants, right? We know that Arizona, for example, is one of the most aggressive against undocumented immigrants, but we didn't know that Chicago, even though it was considered a sanctuary city, it wasn't all the way, you know, a sanctuary city. So as an organization, OCAD, we are fighting in order to have that narrative be corrected, just as far widespread as we can. But it's something that we have to combat constantly with the local media and the federal agencies, because they like to create their own narrative. So that's why we think that it's so important for us to have this kind of agency of knowing what we put out there. And this was kind of like, this is the purpose of this podcast, is to have our narrative be told without having it be tainted by anybody else, but our own experiences.
And just to briefly add to that, Chicago does pride itself in being called the sanctuary city, but what Alex is highlighting is, despite its statements and many initiatives to help prevent that, including the initiation of the DREAM Act a few years ago, and to help promise the young people from the risk of deportation, there's still widespread issues with deportation and undocumented immigrants, and still ICE being a huge presence here in Chicago. And this isn't anything new. This is, history tends to repeat itself, and it's just, when you look at Chicago, obviously really notoriously known as the most segregated city in the country, you know, since the Great Migration, Chicago hasn't been really paying attention to the communities most in need, and those are the Black, those are the brown, those are the communities that are underrepresented. And when you have a huge federal agency like ICE imposing on a huge city, Chicago can only do so much, which is why organizations like OCAD are literally life-changing. And I don't know if I could say this for Alex, but I'm positive if, you know, OCAD wasn't involved, Alex possibly wouldn't be here today.
Absolutely. Yeah. One last, Davida, yes. One last question for Alex and Jesus.
A quick question. Do you find that people in the community, say like people who are documented or migrated here years ago, do you find any type of resilience from them, any type of resistance from them, because their position is secure? Is it any way that they, you know, might have a bad you know what I'm trying to do, look at you differently.
Yes. As much as I'd like to say, no, that's not the case. Yes, I think that sometimes that is the case. I don't necessarily think that it is that it comes anywhere out of malice, but rather from ignorance, right? Because we don't know what we don't know.
Right.
As I mentioned in the tape, I didn't know, I myself being an undocumented immigrant, before I was arrested, I had no idea uh, about the consequences and the intricacy of the process, and how long it would even take, and how unsupported these kind of causes are. So I think that it comes from a place of ignorance, not from a place of malice. But I think that the more that we make these cases public, and the abuse and all of the things that people go through, we are experiencing a lot more support, not just from other immigrants that are here legally, but from whites and blacks, and any other, race that understands that concept of humanity. So I think we are making progress, but it is a very, very long shot for us to, educate and, keep working with it.
That's what I thought. I was born on the west side of Chicago, and I had friends or people I worked with that they would say and I'm saying, these your people, and it would surprise me that they would feel that way.
No, yeah, Ms.
Yes.
To add to what Alex was saying, that, yeah, exactly. And I think that's probably the most heartbreaking issue, especially considering most of these within your communities, your neighbors, people that are supposed to be looking out for you. And that's tragic. We weren't able to touch on that in the podcast just because we had a lot to discuss regarding ICE deportation, and more importantly, the effects that it has within the person. Alex describes his time in an ICE detention center as incarceration, as jail, because of his experience. But we don't want to fetishize his trauma. We focused the podcast on the solutions to what OCAD was trying to do. And OCAD is made up all community run. It's all people from within the community coming together to help. A lot of them are mothers. A lot of them work other jobs. A lot of people coming together to bridge that community together to provide that support. So unfortunately, there is a lot of back and forth, but people are coming together to help prevent that in the future.
Okay, we're gonna try to stay pretty true to our 15-minute windows for each piece. So we hang on to everybody. But I really encourage you to go to the website, listen to the whole piece, learn more. Judy, before you take over the last piece, just circling back to the notion of learning how to become a journalist without going to journalism school. She's gonna kill me for this and hate this, but I wanted to acknowledge that Denise Sicardi joined us here. She's one of my great mentors and helped me get started in using media as activism. She's run Chicago Community TV Network for 45 years or more now. I think it's 45 years. And long before anybody knew what media literacy was, or bringing diverse voices into media, she was there lugging around 3/4-inch camera decks that weigh, trust me, as much as a apartment-sized portable refrigerator. And I'm happy that she's here to join me. I'm going to lift the glass to her. And if you all want to give her a little applause, she's a Chicago treasure.
Happy to have you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, then I want to go on to our next, and again, the full episode, all of the episodes are available through the website, or again, you can download, please subscribe and download via any podcast platform that you want. We have a couple up on the website if you want to go there, but yeah. There's a lot more of the story to be told, which is why we hope to be able to continue doing this. The next selection we want to share you is from the episode called When We Organize, We Win. And in this segment, Davita Brooks, who is nicely here with us today, a senior housing in Little Village or Pilsen. I can't quite remember. Pilsen. In this section, she explains how basically management policies and horrid living conditions led to a group of seniors getting together to change those conditions with the help of a progressive alderman and the Jane Addams Senior Caucus. So let me. Hopefully it'll start playing. Oh, oops. Technical difficulties. Yeah.
They must abide by the Chicago Housing Authority guidelines. It is a scary and dangerous situation for the seniors that live in this building and others like it.
HUD developers or even CHA developers, they leave it to you to provide the things that they would provide in the building, which is wrong because if an outside vendor comes in and buys up some property, he or she doesn't know what we are supposed to have and don't even care. They're just making money marketing apartments. In a CHA building with Chicago guidelines, they have service coordinators to help seniors with whatever they need. They have programs to help seniors with the quality of life. They have proper maintenance. The buildings are cleaner. They're more safe. Therefore, we are underscored, undersold, and we're just getting whatever scraps they throw from the tables. Whereas if it was straight housing and urban development, we would have better things because like I said, I visited other buildings. My eldest brother who passed away in 2018, he was in a HUD building that was beautiful. I've been to a couple of others, that even in the suburbs, managed straight by HUD, not bought by any outside vendor. They got everything that they need.
Miss Brooks' apartment is small, but the life inside is so big. Zebra print curtains, art on the walls of different African women, patterned fabrics adorning the furniture, and framed photos of her kids and grandkids look at me while tall green plants line the windowsill. She's got these nice big speakers too for music playing, and I can't help but feel this longing for my own grandparents. I wish I had more time with them, and though they've passed away, hearing about the city's blatant neglect of its seniors has me really wishing I could know and care for them, feeling such a tenderness for Miss Brooks and Pastor Sutton while also enraged at what they're enduring solely because they are low-income, elderly Black women.
Would you mind introducing yourself, your name and who you are, what you do?
Byron Siccho Lopez, alderman of the 25th Ward.
During the time when they were campaigning, we had 5 candidates and he won out. He personally asked me, what needs are you talking about? And I went to telling him and he said, well, do you have anybody interested? I said, well, yeah, I talk to people all the time. We all got the problems. And what can you do? What are you? He said, I'll work with you.
The more we organize, the more we collaborate, the more partnerships we have, the better follow-ups that we get, the stronger the organizing, the stronger the structure. So, and I have participated with Jane Addams already, we did it in another senior building, when before I was alderman. So I thought, that's what I thought, look, you really, because when they're asking, man, we're ready to do a tenant association, we're ready, and I do participate with organizations, and that the experience that they have with other organizations is like, they do not understand the needs of seniors. Seniors are really in a tough position where they need assistance, right? There's really not a lot of services. I mean, they'll talk to you about a social worker, for instance, right? And oftentimes they lost as well. You don't really need to have, a social worker. You don't need really to have a nurse. So they do it very much what the very minimum, I need to do the very minimum that the law mandates. The rest is their problem, right? And then you have seniors with disabilities. We have seniors who need assistance and social services, and they unfortunately don't get there.
Bottom line, seniors are hurting.
I think that to me, that was kind of the reason why I was very eager to help them organize who are scared, right now, especially in a pandemic. They need to be heard. They need to be, and not just to, just for the show, but, to really listen to the concerns and the issues and to find solutions.
I'm Kelly Visselman, and I am organizing director at Jane Addams Senior Caucus. So we do tenant organizing in different buildings. That's what we would say as our local work. So all over the city, we support seniors in building tenant associations or fighting to keep their housing. That's another, a lot of senior building owners will try to sell the building and evict people. So those are like, either we're working with people to keep their housing or make it better. The alderman's office had said that they had all.
Okay. In the selection. So I'd like to introduce the team that put this together. Ariel Mejia is a Chicago native, an audio artist, a radio producer, and a teacher who came into storytelling from her involvement as a feminist, advisor, and a sexual health educator. And when she learned about the tools for empowerment that Jane Addams Senior Caucus provided and how Davida and Pastor Sutton took that and ran, all the way to creating a new ordinance for better services to seniors, as I understand, she was hooked. So I'd like Ari and Ms. Brooks, if you guys could share with us just a little bit about your meeting and how did you develop this bond to take us on this really excellent work that you guys have done, Ms. Brooks.
Oh, Ari is a sweetheart. She made me feel so comfortable in sharing, which I'm learning more how to do because that was not my experience in life. But she made me feel comfortable and I could feel that she listened. And that's all most seniors want. As long as we're warm, well, I need cable, but and internet. But as long as we're warm, we don't really, we don't really require that much. And people, they're so busy or they're so, but I felt her from the beginning. She's very personable and I felt comfortable sharing.
Oh, thanks for saying that. Yeah. I mean, so I remember when the senior safety ordinance passed, I've been, like Byron Sigcho Lopez said, like I had been familiar with the organizing of Jane Addams. And when I got involved with this project, I knew that Jane Addams was something I wanted that would be really great because, in particular, the George Collins building, like the way that Davida and Pastor Sutton and others who were instrumental in creating the Tenants Association was a story that needed to be told. On top of like what Jesus was saying, like this, the organizing in and of itself, and talking about this organizing is highlighting the disparity and highlighting the reality of for the communities affected. And so, so I got connected with Davida through Kelly Wisselman and Kira Felsenfeld, who work for Jane Addams, who supply the tools to seniors so seniors can be organizing themselves. And so Davida is an incredible organizer and was incredibly instrumental in not just her own tenants association, but the senior safety ordinance that basically if Davida, you want to explain it a little more, but because it's later in the episode, or maybe you'll hear it when you tune in, but the organizing that Davida is a part of is incredible and she's incredible. And I was really honored to talk to you and to get to make this piece. It's one of my most favorite things I've gotten to do in my career in audio, working in audio.
Well, it seemed, my brother who's 81 told me I would talk to a signpost, but they did. I was in on the negotiation with the city lawyers, me and another senior. We had to negotiate word for word for the ordinance. And then I testified with the full city council. And I just, because I have macular degeneration, I can't really read too good. And I was an avid reader, but I just posed a question. I just thought all politicians like babies, old folks, and dogs. Only thing more of American than that is apple pie and baseball, and babies and dogs don't vote. So who against seniors? So they, but that's how I think. And since I can't write anymore, all I can say is what I think and what I feel. And it was just, that was obvious to me.
No, and thank you, Ms. Brooks, for being so forthcoming, let alone the work that you did, as well as, I'm not gonna tell about what's the rest of the episode, because I want everybody else to listen to it, but it's amazing the work that you guys are doing and you've continued to do.
The Alderman Citro Lopez, that man he's amazing. He, from day one, because I was always the candidates come and then they buy chicken for you and then they give you your spiel and vote for me and then you see him again the next election. So I just walked up to him and I rode up to him and told him, we'll eat your chicken. So what you gonna do? What can you do? And he said, I help you. He listened. And that's the whole thing. Now, that's the whole thing. When people listen and they can hear, then next thing you know, folks is doing.
Mhm. Does anybody else have any questions for Ms. Brooks or Ari about their collaboration? I don't see any questions in this. Or you can unmute yourself or raise your hand.
Also, just want to say that also in the room, Kelly Visselman is here, who's, you heard her in the piece, but is works directly with work. Can you hear me? My internet is unstable. Great. Anyways, yeah, I just want to say also that Kelly is here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Kelly, please unmic yourself and say hi for the great work that you guys are doing as well. And I also put into the chat the website for Jane Addams Senior Caucus in case you want to follow up with them about anything that they are doing as well.
Kelly was a tremendous help in getting this show off the ground and facilitating. She's doing great work.
Hey everyone, I'm not sure if you can see me, but
Well,
I'm here and we're really proud of this podcast. Thanks so much to Ari and everyone for working on it. Hi, Ms. Brooks.
Jane Addams, like I said, Jane Addams to me was a lifeline. It gave me a piece that I didn't think I would have in this life, because at least I'm saying something, at least I'm doing something. And well, that's it. That's
Okay.
I love you, baby.
Oh, thank you.
they're both the stars of the piece, so you guys should definitely listen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's go on to Learning on the Line.
Okay, our next piece is called Learning on the Line, and it's from Maribel, who was is Maribel here?
No, Maribel's not here.
Oh, she was our organizing goddess throughout this whole thing. Came up with a great title. But in September last year, Chicago Public Schools went remote learning full time. They kind of failed to account for the approximately 115,000 students, predominantly Black and Brown, who were without the technology required to do school remotely, without the computers, without the proper Wi-Fi. Frankly, it seemed like CPS was ill-equipped to deal with the problem. And organizations like Northwest Side Housing Center stepped up to try and fill that void. So here is a clip from Learning on the Line.
Okay, let me go to the next one. Bear with me. Oops, not this one. Here we go. Yeah. Any technical training here?
You are doing amazing, Jimmy.
Recently did a survey where 112 participants responded. Over 50% responded that the way they connect online is through their cell phone. And so I don't know about you, but I only have one cell phone and I have moms who have 4 kids. And so God knows how their kids are connecting online, and you get one hotspot per family. You may have gotten Chicago connected, but the speed isn't fast enough. No one knew they had to log into 8 hours of remote learning. That's good for maybe 1 or 2 students. What about the rest? Why is it that we can't change the program to meet the needs of our students? We don't have time. for us to let these students get further and further behind. So some major changes is giving a one-to-one hotspot to our students, increasing the speed dramatically. I'm no tech expert, but whatever is needed for students to be on 8 hours of remote learning 5 days a week is what's needed.
Lo más que ellos puedan, le han puesto más gigabytes de internet a su teléfono, o se han hasta cambiado de compañía, han cambiado de plan.
Parents have done as much as they can. They have added more gigabytes to their cell phone, they have changed companies, and they have increased their data usage to pass Wi-Fi to their children's computers. Parents have gone to their neighbors to ask them to lend them their Wi-Fi, telling fellow parents they'll help pay a portion of their bill to allow them to use that internet. I don't think it's fair that CPS said they were going to facilitate internet through Chicago Connected so students wouldn't have a hard time connecting, and that hasn't been the case. Nothing about the program is working.
Maria Carmen is a mother of 2 children in Chicago public schools. Maria feels school administrations have failed parents.
Y para mí eso no es lógico, porque los afectados van a ser nuestros hijos. No voy a ser ni yo.
For me, it's illogical because the ones affected are going to be our kids, not me, the teachers, or the principal. I think and I believe CPS, before starting school, should have held virtual training for parents so they could learn how to use Google Classroom and Google Meets so we could help our kids from home. Another thing, the principal where my son attends school had a sense my son didn't have internet at home and didn't help me.
Those parents who cannot access Chicago Connected free Wi-Fi have been offered hotspots, but for many families, it's not a solution. We don't have them. Who said we have hotspots here? The teachers don't ask how their students are going to connect 3 times a week and tell her my son can't connect, and they don't care. They mark him absent. To help provide some relief for families, CompuDot has partnered with Northwestside Housing to provide 500 computers for the Belmont-Cragen neighborhood. CompuDot is a national non-for-profit who attempted to provide technology access and education to underserved youth. CompuDot currently provides drive-through computer distribution programs in Chicago and its suburbs. According to CompuDot, a study conducted by United Way found that 46% of families in Black and brown communities do not have access to a computer.
So with Belmont-Cragen specifically, man, that we have given out quite a few computers with Belmont-Cragen. I think we're right in about 500 computers in the Belmont-Cragen community. And those have really been spearheaded with the help of the Northwestside Housing Center and really going out into the community in partnership with foundations and funders to find those dollars. Overall, in the Chicago area since late April, we'll give out, after today's distribution, over 4,800 computers in Chicago and the Northern Illinois region. And by the end of the year, we're scheduled to give out about 6,600 computers overall.
That's Kaya, the executive director from CompuDot Chicagoland region. While many parents and students gave the school a pass for not having the greatest online learning structure during the spring quarter, by the time fall rolled around, patience had worn thin. By that point, schools were 6 months into online learning. Even this far in, teacher Susan Benjamin feels as though she's not very connected to her students.
We do not have any interaction with our students because they're not required to come in visually. I co-teach in three regular education classes and what we call general ed. And those students do not come in at all. With their faces. A couple of them have their pictures, I think, on their meme, but that's all I see. And there are a few of them that I've never heard their voice.
There's also an extreme lack of...
Oops. Hello?
We recently did a survey.
Okay, I don't know why that dropped out there. There's signal. Anyway, let's introduce Julio and Jonathan. You're muted, Mo. You're still muted, Mo.
Hi there. Okay. All right. So our producers on this were activist Julio Rodriguez. He is a Chicago native, and he has 8 years experience organizing in housing, small business development, and in Chicago's disinvested communities. He's community development leader for the Northwest Side Housing Center, and he was our resident sage. Brought quite a bit of calmness and a really extensive Rolodex to the workshop. And our journalist was Jonathan Aguilar, who's a freelance multimedia journalist in Chicago. He spent the summer on the front lines of social justice protests and working around the COVID pandemic as a journalist, and shows great dedication to using his tools to promote change. He is also a fabulous photographer, and I encourage you all, as I've done a few times now, to go to our website and look at his photos and learn more about his show and learn more about their show, which is amazing. So I guess I'll ask you guys, let's kick off the questions, see if anybody else has it. What, both for Julio and Jonathan, I'm most curious, from Julio, who was kind of more new to journalism, what did you find the most difficult about this process in the workshop and putting this show together?
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. When I started this, my name is Julio Rodriguez. Just want to acknowledge all the parents that were able to make it today. For me, what was the most challenging portion was the changing nature of what's happening currently with the war between CPS and the Chicago Teachers Union. And more importantly, how the students who are most vulnerable are being put in the middle, how that's changing every single day, and how it's going backwards rather than forward. I know I had the privilege of working directly with parents, and I know Jonathan had the chance to talk to teachers, but I know from the parents that I've spoken to, it's very difficult, not knowing whether and what's going to happen if their kids are going to have school Monday. For the select parents who decided to send their kids back, what's going to happen? Can they go back to work? So just a myriad of issues that were already an issue, but were further exacerbated. But I'll turn it over to Jonathan to share his perspective and how through his interactions with teachers.
Hi, everyone. Thank you again for joining. My name's Jonathan. And speaking to teachers during this time, it was really difficult to hear their stories and kind of what they're going through and how they feel like there's really no support from their administration in these really difficult times. And teachers feel really alone is kind of like what I've gotten. And it seems like now even more so with what's happening between CTU and CPS, it's only continuing. So I think it's important to support your teachers in CPS and just support teachers in general, because it's a really difficult time.
And Julio, since we finished the episode in December, has anything improved in terms of getting internet services reliably to families in Belmont-Cragen? Is that even an iota?
Great question, Judy. It's improved on a very small scale. And I say that's unacceptable because Chicago Public Schools received over $200 million from the federal government. So this is not a matter of they're not being resourced. It's a matter of mismanagement, bureaucracy, racism, because the matter of the fact is many of these families don't have the time or energy to know how to ask the right questions, right? They've been purposely left behind. And the only solution that CPS can come up with is to try to reopen schools and put everybody in danger because they're not having conversations with the community. They're selecting key parents who are going to read off a script. So unfortunately, it's not getting any better. If anything, it's getting worse. And it's our hope that the parents can continue to speak up and fight, because we're all going to see the implications of this, even if you don't have kids, because this is our next workforce. And we're not realizing that we all have a say. I don't have a kid, but I remember my time in Chicago Public Schools.
Okay. Any other questions or comments for Jonathan and Julio?
I have a question.
Yeah, Katrina?
Yes. Jonathan and Julio, thank you so much for this work. My question is in regards to maybe PTA or the school districts of your community. Have they been receptive of your findings? Because I mean, it's blatant what's happening, but because you have put it in this cumulative setting, you know, literally, have they reached out to you guys? Have they responded?
I can share through our engagement with parents, and I know that Jonathan attempted to reach out both to Chicago Public Schools and Chicago Connected, which is a citywide effort to try to connect families to free internet. Parents have been super receptive. They've been finding it very helpful. A couple of weeks ago, we held a small community meeting virtually via Google Meets, and 70 parents came on, and many of them were able to find out firsthand what was actually going to take place with in-person learning and what they could do to get new tablets, new computers, because many times there's a big digital divide and information is not disseminated in people's language. Phone calls are not being made. They're sending a blanket email, not realizing that some people are illiterate and cannot read. And so not factoring those issues in. I tend not to work directly with CPS. I work more in the community and with parents because I don't know if I could handle both as far as working with the bureaucracy, but I'll let Jonathan kind of share what his experience was trying to interact with those respective institutions.
So I reached out to CPS and I never actually heard back from them. I was trying to get a comment about like the digital divide that Julio references and just why some students still don't have computers or internet access, or why, if they do, why is it unusable? Because that's another major issue, that kids, when they live in basements or attics, like they cannot get access to reliable internet. So it was really difficult to get in contact with CPS, and I actually wasn't able to.
And we have a suggestion in the chat from Dory Wilson. Hi, Dory. Is there any work to provide learning via community television networks like local public television stations like WTTW, since it has a mandate for educational television? Does anybody know this? Is any work being done to engage these stations in this process of using broadcasters to kind of fill in this gap for providing this education during the pandemic? I don't have an answer to that. Does anybody have any?
On a very small scale, they've been engaged during select times. But again, it goes back to communicating that information. And there's been many organizations similar to ours who have proposed very tangible and easy solutions, such as making direct phone calls to the students. And there's students that haven't shown up, period, right? And we're half a year in. And I think that's important to acknowledge, because who knows what they're doing? Like there's something must be going on for them not to have shown up once.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm really concerned what's going to happen in the next couple of months once we start to kind of see the impacts of the pandemic, because again, things were already very difficult. This has made it even worse.
Yeah. Any other comments, questions? Then we'll move on. Our next episode segment is about the community of Inglewood. And in the segment that I'm going to play, you'll hear the section where they're talking about this phrase, the power of creative placemaking. And it's defined and explained as a means for the community empowerment and changes taking place in Inglewood. For those of you outside of Chicago, it's a predominantly Black neighborhood on Chicago's South Side. Gets a lot of bad rap. Mostly when you hear the word Chirac, they tend to be talking about Inglewood. And so Natalie Wade went in with this organization, RAGE, Resident Association for Greater Inglewood, to disrupt that narrative. So let me show you a piece. All right, move forward.
Where 112 participants responded, and
Hold on.
over
Providing residents with a sense of ownership in something beautiful.
Do you believe that creative space making impacts community residents' perceptions of Inglewood?
Yes, I definitely do. One, it calls attention to the fact that we have
too many geographic locations that need creative placemaking. So that's an issue. And then two, it really empowers residents, like to see actual residents doing something creative like that, and then encouraging others to think differently about not only Inglewood, but the exact location that we might be beautifying or repurposing.
And Englewood's beautifying efforts have been noticed outside the community. Lydia Ross is the director for public art of Chicago's Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events. She attended the mural unveiling.
Some of the words that were tossed around with this mural were, proud and strong and community. And so I think to have a day like this where people actually get to put a paintbrush in their hands, get their hands dirty and actually be able to go up and down the block and say, like, that black square right there, like I did that. That this isn't just for a group of people, it's with a group of people. So I think that sense of pride, both in having artists who are from the neighborhood and who really celebrate folks from the neighborhood, but also the opportunity to be a part of making it happen yourself. So I think that the impact is that, there's beautiful art where there were white walls before, but also something that people had a hand in making happen.
It's just like a creative day of just joy. And so we're literally painting the mural, we're painting the wall. The public is picking up paintbrushes and they're finishing the mural. But we've got drummers and it sounds like we've got musicians. I didn't even know we had a band, which is so dope. There's literally a band playing right now. I didn't even know they were going to be here.
That's Janelle Nelson, an artist and one of the Englewood Arts Collective's original members.
We want the memory of this event to exist in an ethereal sense, meaning we want folks to, when they think about Inglewood, don't just think about the news headlines that you might see. Think about things like this. This is representative of this community. This is not some outsider coming in, gifting someone's life. This is Inglewood. These are the people that live here. So the lasting impact is us reframing the narrative on a consciousness level and hopefully on a global consciousness level.
We have brilliant people here. We have families that work here. We have people that care about the community. We have people, we have artists, we have doctors, we have everything here. We're not just the worst of us.
Although not from there originally, Felix Will and his family moved to Englewood and he has grown to love the neighborhood.
Don't just think because that's the only thing we can afford. We want to be here. We could have moved anytime. We want to be here and we don't want to leave.
The phrase I kept hearing from Janelle, Asia, and Tanika is the power of creative placemaking.
Creative placemaking is basically reimagining and repurposing an actual location, environment, something artistically or just through creative use of a space. So a more typical description of what creative placemaking could be is how people transform vacant lots and how they make them gardens or put a stage on there or whatever. Just the creative use of a space other than what it was intended for.
The goal is to show that when community members take a hold of their community, like they can be the solution. RAGE was really just a coalition of community members who wanted to make an impact.
Children, it also has, a deeper psychological impact. When you grow up in a neighborhood and you only see abandoned buildings and eyesores, it could make you feel not proud to be from that neighborhood. And it could also make you think that it's normal and that you as an individual are not entitled to a better looking neighborhood.
So I'd like to introduce Natalie Wade, who is a multimedia journalist starting out in her career, who pulled on her many, many skills. If those of you don't understand what multimedia journalists, that means she and others are trained to do everything, write, direct, produce, report, edit, graphics, social media. And Natalie demonstrated all of those skills and more as she developed this story, but in collaboration with several Inglewood residents, including the leaders of RAGE and the Inglewood Arts Collective. Natalie has also earned extra exceptional kudos for her ethereal calm, diligence, and commitment throughout, particularly when she had a situation with her teammate when it changed and she persevered solely on bringing their vision to completion. So Natalie, a question for you. Talk about your experience, growing up Black in Chicago and the impact or the interest that brought that kind of lens that you started out with when you were working on developing the focus in terms of looking at another Black neighborhood in Chicago.
Yeah, definitely. So for me, I did grow up in Chicago, but I grew up on the far north side, and I think I talk about it a little bit in the podcast. So although I had some experiences on the south side of Chicago, I wasn't really a part of the community there. And of course, living here, I had heard all the news headlines. The first thing when you Google Chicago's Englewood is a story from 2013. And I think it's something about how Englewood is the most dangerous neighborhood, and they saw like terrible things going on there, right? And this is something that I saw when I was going to school. I was in CPS. People that I went to school with who lived in Englewood, there was this kind of like stigma towards that neighborhood just because of all the things that you see in the media. And that wasn't what my experience with the people that I met there. They were amazing. They were smart. They were talented. They cared about their community. And I really had an amazing time making this podcast. I got to meet so many great people like Tanika Johnson, who is a genius in some ways. If you don't know, she was the head of the Folded Map Project, which looks at the disparities between North Side and South Side communities. So basically the opposite side of the map. And Aisha Butler, who organized Rage, just because she saw a need. She saw a need, and instead of leaving like a lot of people do, they're like, if you're successful enough, you leave the community you were born into. No, she decided to stay. So I was really inspired by them a lot.
Okay. And if for those of you who haven't, but if you go to our website, the lead quote was one from Aisha Butler about her decision to stay in Englewood when she and her husband and family had thought about moving out. Mm-hmm. Any questions or comments for Natalie? We don't have anybody from Rage here, but any for Natalie in terms of development of it, or how do you go about working against a negative stereotype that has been so firmly implanted in everybody's minds but the people in the neighborhood?
I have a question. This is Julio.
Hey, Julio.
Sure.
All right. Hi, Natalie. Thank you so much for this episode. It's really great. I personally have had the privilege of going to Englewood and seeing firsthand all the beautiful things and the great work that residents are doing. How do you think we could get the media to focus more on those stories, to focus on the great work that people are doing? Because I think it's really unfair that all we hear is about all the quote unquote bad things that happen. Just was curious to hear just your thoughts.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you use the word fair, because when you think about being a journalist, you think about being fair and balanced. And when you're reporting on one area and 95% of the reporting is negative, it's about a shooting or something similar to that isn't fair and balanced. That's just the reality of it. So I think the people at Rage and the people in the Englewoods Art Collective are doing a really great job of pushing their narrative out there. And more recently, especially this summer with the Black Lives Matter movement, which you saw a lot more of them being featured on shows, especially on like WTTW. But I think it really comes down to diversifying the newsroom, kind of like what Jesus was talking about earlier when he was talking about taking away. It comes with making sure you have those voices in your newsroom so you're getting the proper coverage, the fair and balanced coverage.
Any other questions? Good question, Julio. Good answer, Natalie. All right, then we'll go forward. Our next episode segment is called One Code, One Austin. And in the segment that I'm going to play, Maine Williamson, who is a reentry specialist at Institute for Nonviolence Chicago, talks about the successful efforts that they've been a part of in decreasing the violence and number of homicides in the community of Austin, which is located on the far west side of Chicago on the very edge of the city. And in this segment, you'll hear him talking with, as well as other activists and residents who are working tirelessly to make the neighborhood safe and comfortable as home for everybody. It is one smooth move here. Oof. Nope, it's not. Hold on.
Commitment from everyone. Everybody is going to have to step up. If we really want to make the change that we want to make, it's going to take everybody.
Austin led the city in homicides in 2016, but in 2018, they experienced the largest decrease in the homicides of any district. IMVC opened in 2016 as well. So I'd like to say that we had a lot to do with the decrease in 2018.
Austin is also considered a food desert. It's left with just save a lot and food for less. I asked Melissa, where does she do her grocery shopping?
I go to Oak Park. I do not go to my neighborhood. I go to Pete's. I don't go to my neighborhood because number one, there is no grocery stores. And number two, the ones that is there, they're not safe.
Oak Park is a safe west suburb right outside of Austin, and it's 67% white.
And since Austin history proves it was a resourceful community once upon a time, I'm gonna remain in it until, we get there. IMVC has been around for 4 years, and I've already noticed the dent we're making in this community.
What is it that you ultimately want to see in Austin?
I just want Austin to have a chance. This community doesn't deserve to be forgotten about. Austin is a huge part of my life, a huge part of my family's history, and it's important for me to know that my kids here and not worried about, being shot or shot at or any violence occurring or anything like that. Austin has done it before. We was that community where it was a safe haven for our kids to grow up, and I know we can reach that again.
And Joseph Green from Westside Health Authority agrees.
What I want to see in Austin and in Chicago, period, is just us creating and generating the wealth that we deserve. Creating the platform so that the future is where it's going to be.
I want to change the perception of Austin because there's a lot of people who's given up on our communities. This community is going to thrive again. This community is going to be a safe haven for our kids. This community is going to be an up and coming community where people can come in our community and not worry about getting shot, and patronize our stores, and business can come back and we can rebuild our community together. That's my goal for Austin, and that's what I want.
So let me introduce the producers. Courtney Smyers Jones is a multimedia journalist as well from Oakland, California, and her love of storytelling and documentaries has inspired her to form her own production company, Behind the Dream. And she partnered with Maine, also known as Artemio, but he likes Maine better. And Maine is a reentry specialist for the Institute for Nonviolence Chicago, as he indicated in the select, it's called INVC for short. And he works in the Austin and West Garfield Park neighborhoods on Chicago's west side. Now I want to talk a second about their partnership because the two of them clicked like from the very beginning in developing the story from the ground level. And I think it was a match of both Courtney's effervescent personality and energy matched Maine's seeming tireless commitment to help people get second chances and through crises with warmth and compassion. And several times during our workshop, Maine had to leave or took calls for the people that he was serving in the community that he was rushing off while he was still dedicated to doing this. So it was awesome to watch. So, but for both of you guys, I have two questions. First, Courtney, how did coming from Oakland help you to relate to what's going on and being done in Austin? And piggybacking onto that, Maine, what impacted you most about the development and crafting of the story, since, as you said, you had no idea when you took on this mission of what all this would take to do this? Either one of you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you so much for the introduction, Judy. Yes, I am from Oakland, California, and like Oakland, media outlets, they need something to talk about. Austin, they've used Austin to consistently build it up to be crime infested, to be under-resourced, abandoned, and a violent place. And although Austin has a significant number in violence and crime, that's the only thing that's talked about. It's used to be a resourceful community. If you heard the full podcast, you know that it was a community that had resources. It was a community that was a safe haven. And now businesses have been taken away, and it's been left behind. And like Judy said, you know, these journalists on this podcast, we really just want to be a vehicle to allow these stories to be told. I was super proud to be Maine's partner because I've learned so much what it meant to be a real grassroots activist and a real grassroots journalist, because that's what's missing, in my opinion. And that's why we don't hear some of these stories. You guys had a lot of good questions from the group. And, you know, what I think is missing is developing journalists that have compassion and that actually hear from the community members, not just going off of the headlines and whatnot. So I'm definitely, I like to say that I was the right one for this because I do have a lot of experience, especially growing up in Oakland, California, where it's crime, where the same label is crime infested and under-resourced. So I definitely wanted to use my passion for my home and bring that into my second home in Chicago.
And what about you, Maine? What impacted you the most in developing and working on the story with Courtney and us?
Well, when Courtney first contacted me about doing a podcast, so I'm thinking like, okay, well, she want me to go run my mouth because that's what I'm thinking podcasts do, you know, just run your mouth. So when she actually broke it down to me, I'm like, okay, all right, that's something new for me. So when I actually first showed up to the building, to see the diversity in the room, and it was pretty amazing to me because, like, I think it was Alex and Jesus said earlier, usually you don't see that type of color in that type of room when you're doing journalism and stuff like that. So to see that was pretty much uplifting to me. Gave me a lot of motivation to stay dedicated to it because it was different from, you know, doing the hard work, doing the interviews and everything that goes along with building this podcast from the ground. So it was definitely a interesting journey, and Chicago and Oakland really took care of it. So, you know how it is, Bay Area, but it was powerful. You know, me and Courtney, we connected and we pitched ideas. It'd be 2-3 o'clock in the morning. Our communication was great. We'll say, hey, partner, what do you think about this? Or, you know, and we never, you know, at times, I'm not going to lie, at times when I felt like, you know what, man, this is getting tiresome, we uplifted each other, you know, and then same thing for her, you know, she needed, you know, some uplifting as well. And that's what great partners do. You know, they uplift each other to continue to that goal of, you know, getting our voices heard. And also, you know, shedding light to our communities, you know, and getting this exposure that our community needs. So it was a very powerful moment and powerful in doing this. And teamwork makes the dream work.
Yeah, I just want to add one more thing. This podcast is crafted by the community members. So I really urge everyone to go check it out. And like Davida said in her beautiful story with Ari, everyone deserves the quality of life. And that is exactly the motto here. Everyone does deserve the quality of life. And Austin doesn't deserve to be forgotten about, especially because this isn't what it's known for. And I really appreciate, and it was just humbling to talk to every single person on this podcast involved in the story, involved in this specific story, because they've had some of the worst luck and they're still out there giving their blood, sweat, and tears just so someone else won't have to go through what they have went through. And that's what it's called, paying it forward. And everyone in this organization, in the change agent organizations, we're change makers. And that's why we all, you know, get along. That's why we all care. I really hope to produce the next level of journalists that are just like us, because I really feel that's what's going to make the world a better place. So cliche, but so real.
Yeah. And just one more last thing too, and I'm gonna be quiet so we can get some questions. With our podcast, you know, they depict Austin and West Garfield, even the Black and brown communities, as, the media just portrays them as the worst of the worst. And I would say, like, if you really want to get to know our community, you have to date us. You have to come in our community and really assess us and really get the feel for us, because our community is getting better day by day, but depending on who's telling that story, and for a person that lives in it, that works in it, and that, has the share the same pains as these community, as every other community that's being neglected. I mean, you really have to come in our community and date us, and I would say, if any of you guys that's on here that does have any connections with, any councilman or any type of politicians or whatever, the best thing you could do to help Austin and other communities is to, have those lawmakers come to our neighborhood and really see for themselves how beautiful our neighborhood is, and also to see exactly what we go through on a day-to-day basis, and try to provide change that way.
Okay, thank you, May. Thank you, Courtney. Anybody else have any short or long question for either of the two of them or about Austin?
One short one.
Yeah, Tara?
Yeah, I'm 75 years old. I was born in the East Garfield neighborhood, and I've seen the changes from East Garfield, Austin, Humboldt Park, Wicker Park, Lincoln Park. It's a formula. They've been doing in this city all of my life. I've seen it, so it'll be okay.
I know it will.
Plans for it.
I have known that area, Garfield and Austin, in 1960 when I came from Germany, and I worked at Bethany Hospital, and it was a beautiful neighborhood. I wasn't afraid. I remember walking all the way along Homan to Sears store. That was it back there.
Mm-hmm.
And
Sears.
It was, and I walked through Garfield Park. I mean, I know they told me that you had to be careful, but I was entranced because coming from Germany, the atmosphere around was obviously very different, and different people, different colors, which I hadn't seen as much when I was in Germany. But I found it enticing. I found it interesting, and so it's a shame that it has gone downhill that much. That is when it used to be quite beautiful.
Thank you.
Really.
It comes down to go up.
Yes, ma'am.
Formula.
That's right.
Yes,
Tara,
thank
you had a
you,
question?
Maren.
Tara, you had a question?
I just wanted to ask how we can get more of these positive voices out about communities and groups that are disenfranchised and that we have difficulty getting the media to cover, right? So I'm the Director of Development and Communications at the Institute for Nonviolence Chicago. So I'm working to try to change this narrative all the time. Because what I know is that over the past 3 years, when we started in 2016, Austin was the community with the most shootings, most homicides, period. West Garfield, most number of shootings and homicides per capita. Now this year has thrown everybody off. It's a terrible year. But what we saw in those communities over the past 3 years were consistent decreases. We're talking about a 50% decrease in shootings and homicides, right? Like that's real. And so I wish that there was more coverage, because I think that's how you get investment. And I'm working on some collaboratives in West Garfield Park Wellness Collaborative, where we're bringing in, hospitals and other groups to really help as a catalyst. But we need a grocery store, right? How can I convince?
Absolutely, you need a neighborhood.
And I would say this too, Tara, because Save-A-Lot just closed like 2 weeks ago. So there's no grocery stores in Austin, none.
Right. I mean, we are at a point that we really are, the disinvestment and the racism and poverty and militarism that has overtaken our society. I mean, Maine and I work for an organization that's based on the steps and principles of Dr. King, right? And he talks about militarism, poverty, and racism as the three things that really undergird this need to build the beloved community, because that's what's impacting our communities. So I would love, I just hope all of you go to our website, nonviolencechicago.org, and check us out, see what we're doing, get involved. We're hosting webinars and podcasts. We just did one yesterday with victims of violence and how we've worked to help them heal. So please stay involved beyond this, and please Tell your friends in journalism to get involved.
Tara, I just want to comment. I'm so happy you said that. I'm so happy you brought that to the attention of everyone. I want to ask every person that's on this Zoom right now that if you've heard this episode or if you heard the other episodes, to at least share with one other person. And if that person can share with another person and so on, because change happens when you educate yourself. Change happens when you get sick and tired of being sick and tired. And you make a great point. We can talk all day long. We can share, resources, and we can do all of that. But if not enough people are angry or wanting to see change, then nothing's going to happen. So even if you have 12 followers, if you have 5 followers, those people matter. You know why? Because they're going to be the ones that are going to be there no matter what. So it's more about not as much, we might not reach everyone, but if we can reach at least 12 people that want to be on the same accord as us, then we're doing something. And then we advocate and we press those same 12 people to tell another person and another person, because it starts with listening, asking questions, and educating yourself. So everyone who just heard, you don't have to be from Austin to want to help. You don't have to be from Chicago to want to help. You just have to have a heart and to have compassion for other humans, because that is what quality of life means. It means that everyone deserves the same expectations and living qualities that you think you deserve. So let's all pay it forward and share this whole series with at least one person tonight, because that's how we're going to get this change started, guys.
Okay. My vote, Press.
Here, Courtney. Love it. Love it.
Here, Courtney.
Fire.
And I did not need to ask my question because my child literally spoke volume to what I wanted to say, in addition to what Tara was saying. So Courtney, please, I hope you and Maine are, I know you're taking a running list of, or have a running list of people who are in that community who want to continue this fight, because that's exactly what it is, because systemic racism is no joke. And I'm sure this is wonderful. So thank you both.
Oh, thank you. If you guys wonder where I get this energy, it's from my mother. She's so energetic.
I can feel like I'm family now.
So we're gonna move on.
I'm at Zoom now. I call you back, okay? So fine.
Maren, please mute your mic. Huh? Please mute your mic.
Yeah, okay. Well, I think this was a fantastic program, and I wish I wouldn't be as old as I am. I would like to get involved. And I really, truly, just having heard it, I wish I could make a tour and go down Garfield Park and look at the area, see that hospital that I used to work in. That neighborhood wasn't safe then either. There were strange things happening, and I did get beat up one time walking from the L along home and back to where I was living. Not beat up, but I got robbed and things. So, but that was all part of it. I knew I had to be aware, and I was a stranger. It was in a way an outcast in an area that I didn't belong. Do you understand what I'm saying? It was kind of strange. It was a very hard waking up, but I wasn't afraid. I never was afraid.
Well, thank you, Maren. Can I ask you to mute your microphone, because I want to play our last selection. So I want to be respectful of everybody.
Okay.
So our last episode in the series is one that we're still in still continuing to finish the production. And I'll have Mo, if you'll introduce it, and then I'll play it. And unfortunately, our 2 journalist activists are not here today, but we do have short videos of their words about it to play afterwards.
Okay, so Judy will probably get mad at me for delaying. We're running a little over time, but I have to touch on, Maine said that things got rough sometimes. We had a particularly tough stretch over the Thanksgiving week when our deadlines were coming, and to watch all of the producers step up and work during their holiday break when we thought they might not have to was inspiring. And to watch Maine also, whose work brings him into some really heartbreaking circumstances, sometimes show the dedication to the show, was a continued source of inspiration. So, but the last show that we're going to play a clip of is people versus environmental racism. If you're a Chicago resident, you probably know that Chicago's 10th Ward is the city's dumping ground. They have over 79 different industries polluting into their water and their land and into their air. You know, and a story that's gotten a bit of coverage now, but probably not the type of coverage that it's going to get in this piece, is General Irons wanting to move into the 10th Ward. They currently are or were in Lincoln Park, which is a predominantly upper class white neighborhood. And surprise, surprise, they wanted it out, and surprise, surprise, it's being sent to the 10th Ward. And so this piece explores that story. Judy?
Here we go. Forward.
Change agents.
Explosion this morning sent an incredible boom and shake throughout Chicago's Lincoln Park neighborhood.
It looks like that tower door blew up.
It caused a shudder to the earth. People reported their china and their dishes were rattling in their cabinets. The force of the explosion sent a fireball and a mushroom cloud into the air.
That's Alderman Brian Hopkins of Chicago's 2nd Ward in May of 2020. Global airborne pandemic in full swing. He's on the news describing an explosion at General Iron, a metal recycling facility near his home. He and the Northside residents that he represents have been fighting the facility since he took office 5 years ago. And back in 2018, he thought victory was within reach.
General Iron is being sold to another Chicago recycler called RMG. It will follow the fate of Finkel Steel and move to the south side, near 116th and Burley along the Calumet River.
In July of 2018, General Iron partnered with Reserve Management Group and planned to move from the mostly white, upper-class Lincoln Park to the city's 10th Ward, a working-class community made up of 5 predominantly Black and brown neighborhoods: South Chicago, Calumet Heights, South Deering, East Side, and Hedgewich. The residents have been environmentally burdened for decades. Their homes surrounded by nearly 70 industries dumping hazardous pollutants into their backyards. Now, General Iron, a metal scrapping company, was planning to join the list, and only 3 permits stand in their way.
Stop General Iron! Stop General Iron!
But it's not gonna happen without a fight.
So maybe this is just where you come in.
I guess. I totally don't know what I'm doing on this at all.
Girl, this is the creative process.
We just don't want General Iron in our location. Boom.
That's Julia Hunter, lifelong resident of South Shore, a neighborhood bordering the 10th Ward, an area she cares very deeply about. Julia's love of the 10th Ward has moved her to join its residents fighting for the spiritual, physical, and mental soul of the community. 10 years ago, she founded a website called Work Together for Peace, which documents community activism. With a big smile and infectious laugh, she tends to downplay her work.
I just show up. That's it. With a camera, couple of them, and a recorder. There you go.
That you do for free.
That I do for free. Yeah, I do volunteer this time. Yes, I do. To me, knowledge is power at the end of the day. And that's the reason why I had created, one of the main reasons of creating a website is to make people more aware of what's going on around them in their own community, not just what's going on somewhere else.
She takes her Canon 70D camera and acts as a kind of community documentarian. She thinks of her website as part information hub, part narrative challenger, and covers everything from the local protests that took place after Chicago's summer of unrest in June.
What is it that we want from these people? We need to change policy. We need to change.
To Black Lives Matter marches.
And I'm begging you, don't fall into the trap that's being set for us. Love is the most powerful force on this planet. Yes. Let's use it now to heal and stand together.
You know, the work is always emotional. I'm always following incidents where the community is standing up for their rights. Just like now with General Iron. But I want to leave that energy that I think most people in the community is feeling right now. I'm asking for help. I'm dying for help. I need help. I done told you what I wanted. You seem like you're not listening to me.
Freedom of speech is the bedrock of American democracy.
But what happens when nobody's listening? The 10th Ward has been fighting for the health of their community for decades, and the response? A deafening silence.
Okay, so unfortunately, Julia and Bia, the producers on this, had prior engagements, so they're not with us today. Our loss, they're both delightful. And I would love to, we all would love to hear, their thoughts behind the show. But Julia, who somehow claims herself not to be an activist, started working together for peace 10 years ago, as you mentioned in the show. I highly encourage you to go visit. We'll post the link. She is a non-stop source of energy. And Bia has her master's from Northwestern University's Medill Graduate School. She's produced podcasts for USA Today and WBEZ. And in lieu of questions for them, we're going to post their video hooks, which show up onto our social media, which I heavily encourage you all to follow.
No, I'll play the video hooks. We're going to play the video hooks.
Oh, yeah. What did I say?
We're going to post them. Hold on.
Oh, wait, no, and they're posted to our social media.
Okay. So I can move this over. No, here we go. This is Julia.
I'm Julia Hunter. I live on the Southeast side, the 10th Ward. I work with Alliance of Southeast and work together for peace. My episode is related to environmental justice. We're dealing with the relocation of General Iron. It actually demonstrates the process of democracy of something happened to a small community, we're actually a big community, where we have spoken already, and for some reason, they're not listening to us. And I'm so proud of how we continue to keep fighting for our rights. We're gonna make sure that democracy be what we deserve to have as a community.
And here's Bia.
Hi, I'm Bia Medius with the Change Agents podcast, producer of the episode, The People v. Environmental Racism. One of the things that most impressed me during this episode was actually meeting the activists. Working with Julia personally was very inspiring. She doesn't consider herself an activist. She considers herself more of an organizer, but she is an activist. And I really enjoyed seeing somebody make their small contributions that are so meaningful. And when I actually got into this community and saw the people who she was working with, I could totally understand how that happens, because everybody's just trying to pitch in and do what they can to make their community better. They just want to breathe. They just want to live.
So, unfortunately, and our plans continue to have that for this first season or our second season. And to wrap up, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time, I want to just tell you what our future plans and hopes and dreams are for Change Agents. Currently, now that we've launched and the series is up, as we keep saying over and over, on many different podcast platforms, as well as our website, and that will be up forever, we hope. And we are also going to be collaborating with the different community organizations that we worked with who are and the activists in the series to host what we're calling virtual town hall meetings. We feel very strongly, and this is not just something to watch and feel good about or sad about, but as a tool for organizing. And we want each of the communities involved, the organizations involved, to use the episodes to trigger discussions, to talk about other resources that are available and solutions to continue this fight for solutions and better communities. Secondly, and we'll be doing that starting even as early as next month, probably the first one will be with the OCAD, the Organizing Communities Against Deportation. We're also ramping up for season 2, hoping to be able to have another summer production series as we did with these guys, producing 6 to 8 new episodes. So we are out looking for funding as we speak. And we're also having in talks to have an additional, beyond just being a podcast, having a distributor, either a radio station or a larger podcast distributor, so that more people can find these stories in more ways than just us. So we'd like to keep this going forever, because as you guys have said, there's so many stories that need to be shared. There's so many issues that are going on that people are on the ground. And as Courtney said so beautifully, all of us can participate in so many different ways. And as all of us who are committing our lives to be in journalism or the media is, we do this because we do care that media is a tool that can be used to empower people, create awareness, increase awareness, and be a part of social change. So I'll let it close up with Maurice, and then we want to toast our team.
I won't drag this on, just I'll give you the call to arms. Go to our website. Natalie Wade, one of the producers, is doing an amazing job posting content about the show and getting the word out. And that's what we need. We need to get the word out. So go to our website, follow the links to our social media accounts, and follow, please, post, repost material. If you use Stitcher or Apple Podcasts or Google or we're on all those platforms. And a little secret, if you go in and you subscribe to the show, it counts as 5 downloads for us as opposed to 1 download, because it downloads all the shows. And that's what's going to get us to another season, is getting this show heard. And Judy, did you mention the town halls?
I did.
Yeah, okay. And that is all. Please go to the website, and I hope you enjoyed everything.
Now, before we go, if everybody would lift their glass or their bowl or their cup and
water.
All right, because you're driving.
I'd like to initiate a personal toast and moment of heartfelt gratitude to Maine, Courtney, Ari, Natalie, Jonathan, Julio, Jesus, and last but not least, Alex, for all of your love and commitment and trust in me and Maurice to walk this walk with us to initiate season 1 of Change Agents. Thank you so very much. We love you.
Here, here, here.
Congratulations, everyone. Well done. Well done.
Awesome work. Awesome work.
Thank you.
Really great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tara, for coming. Thanks for
Yes,
supporting
Tara.
us.
Thank
I
you,
love
Courtney and Maine, for telling people what we're doing.
Thank you for the great work.
The west side is the best side. Just
Oh,
reminding
yeah.
everybody.
And we should take a walk down in East Garfield.
West Coast and the West Side, bitch.
That's right. I see you throwing up the W, Courtney.
Yes.
Okay.
Guys, if
All
you're
right, everybody be safe.
You're in Chicago.
Thank you so much.
Warm.
Y'all see our weather here in Chicago is ugly right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
We need to bring this to DC.
Sorry, but this is us right now.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Lord. Yes. Stay safe and warm.
I'm staying in the house.
Gotta pick up my son from karate.
Going out till May. I'll be outside in May. That's it.
Yeah. No.
Oh, God. Thanks, everyone, for coming.
Okay.
Of course. Of course.
Courtney, I'm finna call you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Bye.
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 Bye, Marion. Bye, Miss Brooke. I want to be friends with you, Miss Brooke.
Bye, Coco.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, of course.
Of course. Thank
Bye.
you for coming.
Yeah. It's
Good
so
job,
interesting.
Natalie.
We all just don't do enough.
Take care.
Okay. All right, Judith, call me later.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, Maurice.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Nathan Pollard, are you still on? And Fenton. Nate, you gonna hang on for a second? Nate? Nate? You there?